Today, I'd like to take us forward by sending us way, way back. Back to before all the cell phones in our pockets, back to all the computers on our desks, to when people did crazy things like write on pieces of paper. This journey started for me about 5 years ago when I received a beautifully handwritten letter in the mail from one of my dearest friends. And he introduced me to a concept called the Month of Letters, which is ironically an online group, so it is electronically based. But every February, participants will practice the art of writing letters. And so for the entire month of February, every single day, you're challenged to send a real piece of mail to a real person. You can use little cards, you can use big long letters, you can do all kinds of fun things with it. But that process of really writing to people started the process of changing my life back from an electronic base to a paper base. The next item along the line that happened to me was one morning I was awoken by a wonderful sound, that lovely alarm on the phone that says, hey, you have a meeting in 10 minutes. Well, the fact that I live more than 30 minutes away from my office said, oops, I don't think I'm going to make that meeting. That was a defining moment for me because I had become so dependent on the electronic calendar in Outlook, as I'm sure a lot of us are, that I realized I'd made a grievous error. And that was that in addition to whatever lovely electronics I use, I really need to keep myself organized on paper as well. The other thing that really influenced this idea was my students. I am an English teacher at Lake Central State College, and I have found that over the last few years, I have a really hard time getting students to take notes while they're sitting in class. I find myself saying things like, open your notebooks, take out a writing utensil. And I, as a college student, remember writing voraciously during class. I wasn't always writing about the notes that the lecture was on, right? I was often doodling or other things. But the very process of writing, and research backs this up, the very process of physically writing notes helps you remember things that you're seeing, hearing in person. So I've really tried to challenge my students to stop taking pictures of my whiteboard with their cell phones and actually write things down. I've even used some of my own techniques, become an avid bullet journaler in addition to using a paper calendar. And so the process of graphically organizing my own life has really helped me graphically organize my classes as well. So oftentimes I will actually hand my students a physical piece of paper that has boxes on it. Maybe it has little tags where they need to label things. Maybe it's an outline and they fill in the blanks as we go through the process. I find that by giving them even one simple piece of paper, it makes them write things down. It forces them into that note-taking mode. I found that most of the note-taking research is based on things before we even had this technology. Most of the research on note-taking, at least on note-taking strategies, comes from the early 1970s. And so our students don't relate to that very well. So today's student needs some electronics. There's no doubt about it. I teach a lot online. I use a lot of online techniques to help people remember things. But when I have them in a room face to face, I insist that we handwrite things. And I have found that it is helping. It does help when finals week rolls around. It does help when students go to take a test or when they call me and ask me a question. They actually tend to know more about what they're even asking. And that's really helping improve things. So I invite you to take a look at your own life, see where some paper and a pen might be a good substitute or at least a good supplement for that smartphone or that computer.